I will be right back.
Okay. Hello. We have not yet officially started. We've just gone live to let people know that we are here. We will officially start at 3 o'clock. But thank you for coming and joining us today. Yeah. Well, while we're waiting to actually start the thing, how are you guys doing today? No, that's just the way streams work. We're going, quote, live from where we are, and then it's a 20-ish, 30 seconds behind what you're seeing. So. Yes, Ty is feeling much better today. Yeah, we think he was one of those 24-hour things. He didn't sleep well, so he wasn't really up to doing anything, so we pushed it back to today. But he'll appreciate you asking when he gets back from his trip out of the room.
Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back, Ty. We have one viewer.
Yeah. It's Michael.
It is
Hi, Michael. Also, to answer, yes, I am feeling better. Thank you, Michael. We have 3 concurrent viewers. One is you, one is Michael, and who knows what the other one is. If there is actually somebody, or if YouTube is just being mean again. Okay, where is... This is what I want. Uh-oh. That's not good.
Did you lose your pen?
I lost my pen! This is a problem. Oh, I found it.
Okay.
We have about 2 minutes.
Before we officially start.
Turn. Is there a good balance between the background music and our talking there, Michael?
That's cute. Balance is good. Okay.
Oh, good. Kids just...
Alright. That brings us to 3 o'clock.
Sorry, I just read the thing Michael said about the cat thing. Yeah, that's adorable. Anyways, yes, it is now 3 o'clock, so we can now officially start the thing.
Now officially start. So, hello everyone. Currently here and watching this in the future. Welcome to the Children of Anima Character Showcase livestream. I'm Tarly Wolf, as usual, co-writer. The one currently drawing is Ty Lane,
Hello.
artist and co-writer. Love your work so much. As usual, this live stream will be showcasing a different character every week, each one holding a different LGBTQ flag to show where they stand in the rainbow. We will also be talking about the character in question, talking about their past, their interests, the inspiration behind them, and what we're excited about for them. In our last 2 weeks, we talked about Ariel Bourne and Zeke Graham, along with answering several questions regarding wolf packs in the world, with a few teasers about what other shifter groups might be like. Today, we will be drawing Corvus. It's currently the only name the pack has for him, as he really doesn't want to talk about his family, or the murder grouping of crows he was part of. He is a favorite of ours in the Children of Anima comic. Of course, you may have heard us say that about a lot, but we don't exactly hate any of the characters we've created. You will see a bit of him in the coming chapter. Well,
No.
chapter 2.
Let's say we won't really get to see him until chapter 2. He'll be pretty prominent actually in chapter 2. But yeah.
Yeah. And beyond that, you'll see quite a bit of him as well. He does play a decent role in the upcoming events. Finally, if you haven't read the prologue yet, we strongly recommend you do. While Corvus, again, doesn't appear in the prologue or in what we have up, it's still a beautiful start to the story we've planned and begun sharing with all of you. The link is posted in the description now, and the first pages of Chapter 1 became available for public viewing yesterday. So check that out after the live stream. You'll also find links to our Facebook page where you can stay caught up with all our news and information, and our Twitter, and a link to the stream support.
Streamlabs. If you there's a link to our Streamlabs if you want to support us down below. It's simple donations and stuff, obviously. It's just something on the side as well as our Patreon.
Now that all of the official stuff has been said, let's get on to the interesting stuff. Oh, excuse me. Once again, the person you see on the screen is the lovely Corvus. He is 31 years old, approximately. He has black hair and blue eyes. He stands about 6 feet tall, so he's pretty tall. And he is a man of flesh and bone.
He is skinny.
There is no body fat anywhere on this man, and it's not for lack of trying. He doesn't really even have much muscle. Which is actually pretty true of most crows. They don't really put on the muscle mass or the body weight much. So that's fun for those who want either of them. But we'll get more into crow information in a little bit. Corvus has a feather tattoo over his heart, which you won't be able to see because I believe he's wearing a shirt here.
Yes,
yeah,
he is.
But this particular tattoo is in remembrance of his little sister, who was lost during a conflict with another murder when he was a child. Did I mention what the tattoo was?
A feather, yes, you did.
Okay. Why don't you tell them what the feather looks like?
The feather is a black crow's feather, and it sort of curves. It's sort of curved, sort of like this. And then, yeah. But it is a black crow's feather. It's, specifically just something he chose to get. He was very close to his youngest sister. He was not as close to his other siblings as he was to her. But it's something simple that it's symbolic to him, but maybe wouldn't be to others.
One more interesting little tidbit about him is that he has not actually been to college, which makes him the only adult member of the pack to not have a college education. We'll see if that lasts. So some basic information on the crows, and again, if you have any questions about Corvus or about crow shifters or in general, feel free to post them. We will answer them as best we can. Just like their animal counterparts, crows can be found on every continent in the world. They're native everywhere. They are not as bound to a specific piece of land or territories as wolf packs are.
They're migratory people.
Yeah. Although unlike other avian shifters, they're not quite as likely to migrate with the weather. Because if you'll look outside in the winter, you may notice a murder of crows yelling. I know I've woken up to them on multiple occasions myself. But yeah, they are definitely more migratory than any influence from Harry Dresden on the series. I've actually never read it.
I've never actually... Okay, so I remember hearing about the Dresden Files. I think my dad was really into them. I think there was like a show or something at some point.
I think so. I've never seen that either.
But I never saw it. I'd been curious about it, but no, there's no inspiration from the Dresden Files or Harry Dresden.
So, yeah, no.
Not to say there isn't inspiration from other media, just not
Yeah.
that particular one.
Just not that one. And anything that we've taken that seems similar is completely coincidental. Because, yeah, neither of us have read or seen anything.
That is
Of
cool.
course, now I'm wondering what.
Yeah.
what similar. So maybe I'll have. No, I shouldn't go read them right now. I have other things to do.
And we're already in the middle of a show right now.
We really are.
You are not interrupting my Voyager, damn it.
Anyway, so yeah, no influence from Harry Dresden. Yeah, but yeah, they are very much more likely to move from city to city or town to town as strikes their fancy, or if they just get bored in a specific location. And the leader of the Crows, known as the Corvus, is usually the reason why they move around in any given location. Crows can be found pretty much anywhere on any continent, though they do thrive in urban areas much more than other shifter groups do. Yes, time-consuming addictions are great, especially now in quarantine. So yeah, they Crow shifters, along with any other avian shifters that might be found in a urban setting, generally thrive in
I'm sorry. It's not something we've talked about, but now suddenly I'm thinking of pigeon shifters.
That's kind of what I was thinking of too.
You said bird shifters in cities, and my brain went, pigeons? No, as of yet, there are no pigeon shifters.
Probably not going to be. But there are other kinds of birds that show up in a city as well, and I don't want to completely write them all off.
Yeah, no.
Any avian shifters
What happens to the mass of shifters when they change? It depends on what type they are. It basically, their mass will shift to it's not a 1-to-1. So
No,
like you're not gonna have a crow that's the size of a person or have the same mass as a person. They actually do shrink down.
That being said, shifters are slightly bigger than their natural counterparts.
Yes.
Not a huge difference. Like they're not like twice the size or anything, but they are bigger. So if you put a normal sized crow next to a shifter crow, you would see that the shifter crow is bigger in general. As to what happens to the mass of the shifters, nobody knows. They just shift. There are a lot of theories, usually in academia, from the wizards, about what could possibly happen. Some say that the mass is put aside in by the anima to be returned when they shift back. Others think that it just kind of gets dissolved, and then comes back somehow. There are a lot of theories, but no one really knows for sure, because no shifter has walked into any academia and said, "Let's figure out how I do this." It's enough that they do it, and they yeah. But yeah, good question. Let's see. Another thing about the crows, like their animal counterparts, they remember forever.
A slight against a crow shifter is remembered and passed on throughout the murder, and it's not. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of the vengeance. I'll say that much.
Yeah, no. Crow shifters are vicious when wrong.
I could probably see that. I would imagine one of the shifters who went to college did some physics experiments. There probably might be some shifter out there who'd done it.
Yep. Very likely. But anything that they discovered either wasn't shared with the world or was inconclusive. So.
Especially because, as far as shifters are concerned, they're very private people. It's something that's been instilled in them over generations. It doesn't matter what type of shifter you are. Shifter business is shifter business, and it's very, very rare for outsiders to be let in or involved in anything.
Very much so. It's a leftover from the thousands of years where they were hunted down and killed because they could shift.
In reference
in the last 200 years or so, where they've been allowed to be visible without the fear of being hunted down. So,
as I was going to say, in relation to specifically crow shifters and their likeness to their real life counterpart, actual crows, an example of a murder never forgetting or wanting to seek vengeance. That's actually how Corvus lost his little sister. He is the second child out of 4. He has one older brother and 2 younger sisters. But during a confrontation with another murder, his little sister was killed. And because of that, throughout the time, the murder systematically used challenges to take out the other murder.
This took place over about the course of about a month or so.
Corvus was probably, I would say, 15 at the time. Is there a possibility of a story arc where the masquerade actually ends, or is there a debate about ending it, or is it?
What masquerade?
I would say what masquerade exactly? Like all of the shifters, they're out in the open. Like people.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about shifters.
Yes, they know shifters exist. They have the right to vote, even. Killing them for no reason is illegal, just like it would be to anyone else. So there's. I'm not quite sure what you mean by the masquerade.
But yes.
In fact, while we wait for Michael to clarify his questions, crow shifters have been known to hunt those who have wronged them for years, and then exact their vengeance when they have finally found them again. Okay.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
But anyways, yes. Corvus was about 15 when it happened. His older brother was 17 and very close to. He was already in the process of learning to be the next Corbo, as in crow shifters. The leader of the group is always chosen as the firstborn son, as so long as he is not found wanting. And
yep.
Corvus's brother was, well, perfect in their father's eye. So.
Yep. So, yeah, not found wanting. So there is private and there is this is a secret that is existential, but we have to preserve no matter what. Okay, yeah, this is definitely more private. It's a private born of centuries of having been killed as species. They're I mean, think about it. If our family had been systematically hunted down and killed for thousands of years, 200 years of safety would seem like nothing. There's a cultural fear that makes it hard for them to trust their secrets, I'll say, which, you know, the way they are, yeah, and it's kind of true of all shifters.
And
well,
it will be something we get into in the comic itself.
Not for a little while, but yeah.
Not for a little while, but there will be stuff that comes up.
Are there species and aspects of magic that are more the focus of popular attention? Let's see.
So magic itself is primarily in humans, and it is not in all humans. Shifters don't have magic. Elves will have their own sort of magic, but what is referred to as magic is only in humans. And these people are these are the people who make pacts with the Anima, which we'll go much more into when we talk about Hayden. As he is a wizard. However, that being said, there are many shifter groups that will find themselves on land that has what is basically referred to as a place of power, and it's kind of a font of magic in a way. And these places are very rare, but every single one seems to have some shifter group attached to it. Nobody quite understands why this happens, but it just seems to be how it is.
Yeah. As for species that are the focus of popular attentions, that would likely be those who thrive with attention or who are more easy to move around, such as some bird shifters. Let's see. The crows, definitely. Let's see. The wolves kind of fade into the background. Mostly, a lot of the predator species, big predator species do. It's safer that way. It was a lot easier for the big predator species to get found and hunted than it was for a lot of the avians. Cool. That's a thing. Again, don't know exactly what Genius Loki is, but places of power are found in a lot of fantasy worlds, so it's not surprising they had one too. But yeah, for the most part, it's as a species. I don't think there's any one species of shifter that has more public attention than another. There are specific groups who might thrive on it more than others, or specific people in a group. But as a whole, it depends. But yeah. They really do, Michael, yes. Let's see. So back to Corvus, though if you have any questions about crows in general, feel free to keep asking them. His place in the pack, he's only really been with the pack for less than 6 months. He's a very recent addition. In fact, he's the newest member of the pack. However, because he is a crow shifter, meaning he's kind of small, they've made him a sentinel, which means that he patrols the territory and makes sure that nothing's out of line and that everything is safe and that intruders haven't come onto the territory. The formalization of magic, the study of magic, will be covered in Hayden's character live stream, as
Yes.
he is a wizard, and that's best gotten into with him. So we're not going to double up on that information here. But
Yeah, that is something that will definitely be talked about in a later live stream. Promise. That's actually something that I've been working on. That's kind of my baby a bit.
It really is. Yeah, and Hayden's live stream is May 21st, so we've got a little while to go before that, but it will be.
Unfortunately, that's about a month away, but we will definitely be talking about it.
Good question though. So yeah, Hayden is tasked with patrolling the territory and making sure
Corvus is
everything's safe.
Corvus is taxed with. You said Hayden.
Yes, Corvus. Hayden has a different job, or will have a different job, and he's not part of this live stream. As for an actual paying job, he currently doesn't have one. As I mentioned before, he's just recently joined the pack.
The cat-eared proprietor of the magic shop. That is Hayden. That is, in fact, Hayden.
Yep.
That is one of the main characters. That is Hayden Daniels.
And will be gotten into more deeply on his live stream. That is Ty's baby.
He is my baby. I have so much to say about Hayden.
I need to keep this on the crows and the shifters.
Oh, I don't like this face. Why is his face bothering me so much? Anyways.
But yeah. Yeah, Hayden Daniels. He's good. So Corvus is new to the pack. I said that. He's still getting his footing underneath him. And the pack is well familiar with letting people settle in before encouraging them to find something productive to do with their time. So there's that. He's got about another month or two before he's gently pushed towards something. That being said, Zeke is considering giving him the option to go to college, if there's something he'd like to do, or if there's something he's interested in. It's standard for packs to send their members to college, so it isn't outside the norm for him to do so. And they've got the money, and it's an incentive sometimes for joining a pack is that they will pay for your college education. Of course, most packs are very picky about who they'll take in, so yeah, that's always fun. But yeah, currently he is unemployed, but that's not going to be so for much longer unless he goes to college. Let's see. His family. He doesn't really talk about his family much to the pack. He's a very secret person, and all they really know is that they were not kind to him. We know that he was the second-born son, as well as a middle child, having 2 younger sisters and an older brother, who then became the leader of their murder, which again is a group of crows. Other than that, he has mentioned to some of the pups that he has 2 nephews and a niece, the youngest of them being Arachne's age. He lost touch with them when he left his murder, and he misses them. That much is kind of obvious to anyone who watches him when he talks about them. So he's a good boy. Let's see. A bit of his personal history. He obviously grew up in a murder. It was very old school, very traditional. His parents were very strict, but very loving. As Ty mentioned before, the firstborn son takes over the murder in a traditional group. If the firstborn is found wanting, the role goes to this nextborn son. And if they're wanting, if they're like crazy or just too violent
or even on the other end of that, if they don't have what it takes, basically, if they don't have that commanding or something, that is still also considered found wanting in at least in more old school Crow ideals.
Yeah. Less traditional murders have different requirements. But for very, very traditional ones, firstborn male, and if he's
I'm sorry, that is for Hayden, but I love that. I will add that to Hayden's thing.
Yep.
Though, to be fair, this is a little off topic, I'm sorry, but we've kind of already seen what Hayden would do with a Karen, especially if she asked to see the manager. Because...
Okay, but Zeke wasn't being
a
Karen.
No, Zeke was not being a Karen, however... it would very much be very similar to what he did to Zeke, in that saying, "Oh yes, let me go get him." Turns around, goes to the back, comes back. "Hi, I'm the owner." But yes.
And now back on topic.
Look, I'm sorry, okay?
It's like herding cats here. I love you. Let's see. Talked about the traditional murders. After died, and then they basically wiped out the other murder. Within a month, the other murder was dead, and none of them were brought up for murder because all of these were done in the form of justified challenges. And we'll get to your Michael's question comment in a minute. I want to get through this particular thing first. Basically what those are, and should have mentioned this during the Wolf Zeke's thing as well, but I didn't. Something that's been written into American law because of all the shifters that are legal citizens and residents of the states is that when a shifter, or generally the leader of a shifter group, challenges another to a challenge, basically it's a fight to the death, and there must be provable cause. So you can't just go up and challenge someone and say, "I hate your face, I'ma challenge you to death," and then kill them. That's not provable proof. That's not a good cause for anything. But if, say, this other person has kidnapped your daughter or killed your daughter or something, that is considered valid, and you can challenge this other shifter, and if they die, then it is not considered murder. Now, in that way, a human could challenge a shifter, and vice versa, and if the other person died, then it again would not be counted as murder. But most humans don't challenge shifters because they tend to be a little stronger and a little faster, and some challenges are done in animal form, and well, most shifters have teeth and claws, and us pitiful humans don't. So yeah, that's a little about the challenges aspect of the shifter society. Now, about your question thing, Corvus has pierced ears, which leads me to the attitudes towards body modification in the shifter communities and how they show up in the shifted form.
It really
so-
depends on the shifter and what piercing and body modification is. Things like tattoos don't typically show up. Piercings may or may not show up. It depends again on what type of shifter they are. Typically in people like Corvus, the crow shifters, their piercings don't really show up in their bird form. However, it wouldn't be too surprising for, say, a wolf shifter who has piercings, for those piercings to show up in when they're in their wolf form. So say they have their ears pierced, there's a good chance that the wolf might still have those piercings.
Yeah, you know, ears, nipples. Yeah.
Sorry, I just thought of a wolf with nipple piercings, and that's just awkward. Why did you do that?
Why do humans do it?
Huh?
Why do humans do it?
Varying reasons.
Exactly. But
and on that note, yeah, the as far as a shifter community, like the view on body modifications, it would be dependent on the shifters themselves. There are some shifters who body modification is very much a ritualistic thing, especially the ones who were native to America before many other shifters immigrated here.
Yeah, I would also say that's true of some of shifter packs found in Africa, possibly Egypt. They can be very ritualistic for them as well. That's where I was trying not to go, but thank you, Michael.
I stayed away from there. I was good.
You were. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are some shifter groups, or specific packs or murders or parts or whatever, that are very against it. They consider themselves, some of them consider themselves traditional, in that the body is a temple and we are the closest to nature and therefore, etc., etc. So they likely don't have tattoos or piercings or any of that stuff. Back to challenges. Can you have a champion take the challenge? No. If you give a challenge, you have to be the one to stand in, and if you are challenged, you have to be the one to take it. Part of this dates back to when alphas or other leaders of specific types of shifters would challenge each other for territory or to take in their specific shifter group. I'm just going to say pack because it's easier, into their own. So the alpha of this other pack would come and challenge the alpha to the resident pack, and they would fight, and the winner would have the territory and the people, etc. Of course, you can't challenge someone for territory these days. That's illegal. Territory is not a justifiable reason to kill somebody on American soil. Yes. Way back when, they were a form of formal war. They can still technically be used that way if you've got a justifiable reason. For example, this group kidnapped my daughter and then killed her, as we saw with the crows. Or as Corvus saw with his little sister and his family. That was very much a systematic war done in the form of challenge. So, yes, that was a very good takeaway on that, Michael. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. His brother became the leader, the Corvo, of their murder when he was. How old was Corvus's brother?
We hadn't actually talked about it, but I would say, it was probably into his, early 30s. He had gone off to college, started to see more of the world as more shifters tend to do, and his father, instead, unlike many other times where somebody will die or something like that, his father just passed it on.
Minor problem, Ty. You said when Corvus' sister died, he was 15 and his brother was 17.
Yes. I didn't say he took over.
However, Corvus is currently 31. That makes his brother 33.
Yep, you're right. I'm forgetting ages. Thank you for that.
And while you're considering that question, I will answer part of Michael's. Any infamous instances where some villain had a potential challenger assassinated in order to avoid having to risk their life in a challenge? Probably, maybe. That kind of thing is very much frowned upon, though, because if you do assassinate a challenger before the challenge, then you're seen as a coward, and you are basically. Specifics depend on the type of shifter you are, but specifically in packs, if you can be like kicked out of every wolf pack, you would then become a permanent lone wolf, and no wolf shifter would take you in or help you or even acknowledge your existence. So doing that is just bad.
Akin to social suicide.
It really is. And again, with other shifters that might be slightly different, but for wolves, it's if you're challenged, you do the challenge. You can also like if you're challenged, you kind of have to accept, or you're but you could also then quote throw the challenge, in which basically the challenge starts and you basically prostrate yourself and surrender, basically, which gives them the win and the challenge is over. And it's basically saying, I acknowledge that you're stronger than me and that I can't defeat you. But I really don't want to die, so I'm giving myself and everything that I have over to you, at which point you would be taken into the pack. So, hence villain, someone who is desperate to avoid accountability. Yeah, no, it really doesn't go well for them. They're basically no. Most shifter groups don't see. Yeah, most shifter groups don't see that as a good thing. Now there may be specific groups who don't care. I'm not saying that every species is of every group of every species is very much the same. But for the most part, culturally, they're very much, you accept the challenges because the not to is why. Yeah, exactly. The surrendering is definitely like that, Michael. I'm showing that I have the courage to appear and risk my life, but I am not here to kill. Yeah. Yeah. So, have I given you enough time to think about that answer, Ty?
Brain is still a little fuzzy, but basically, oh no. So basically, with Corvus and his brother, um, I would say his brother probably took over. Either way, their parents, nothing happened to their parents particularly. They probably um, are still, I mean, they're still alive. His brother just would have taken over probably after returning from college. But one thing we can talk about, and the reason why Corvus is no longer with his murder is that when his brother took over, things changed.
They really did, yeah. His brother was very abusive. At first in that he just expected things to be done his way immediately, and he didn't really listen to anyone who tried to give him a different way or remind him that there were other ways to do this. He would also very much gaslight those closest to him. Corvus spent a lot of years being just beaten down in one way or another. Eventually, it became too much for him. And about 10 months ago, Corvus left the murder when his brother became violent.
This was only compounded by his brother's actions, not just to him, but also to his eldest nephew and his sister-in-law, who, as far as the murder knows, killed herself after
his
some
first
things happened.
sister-in-law.
Yes, his first sister-in-law. He now has a new sister-in-law, but yes.
Yes. No one else was ready to leave the murder at the time he did, so he went away on his own. He did regret leaving his nephews and his niece behind, as well as his other sister. But he couldn't legally take any of them. And trying to take a child from any shifter group with American law is very difficult, and without any stability, Corvus wouldn't have been able to have any leg to stand on, no matter what his brother was like.
And
even if he could prove it.
He could have challenged his brother for leadership of the murder. However, Corvus is very much not strong enough to have faced his brother, and he knows that. A friend of mine linked me a bit a while ago about how wolves and crow, or possibly ravens, I forget, work together in the wild. Huh! That's an interesting thing.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah. I didn't know they did. So, yeah, Corvus isn't really strong enough.
No, he was not. He knew he wasn't strong enough, which is why he instead left. Had he been strong enough, he would have challenged his brother for leadership of the murder, because he does care very much about the murder. They are his family. Also, as far as a murder is concerned, a murder is much smaller than, say, a pack. Typically no more than probably, I think we said 20.
Yeah.
So it's fairly it's a pretty small group. But
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, very much so. And then 4 months later, 6 months ago, he found his way to Green Lake, Oregon, which is not near any major cities at all. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. But he had heard about a pack there who was already known to take in members from other species, such as elves and humans, and he thought he might be able to make a place for himself within the pack because he didn't want to try another murder. Between the strict traditional stuff he'd grown up with and his brother, he also didn't want to be seen as like a traitor going from one murder to another, and he thought that by going to a pack it would distance him from that. So that's why he went looking for Zeke. Anything else you want to add about his history stuff?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay. Okay.
It's gonna be interesting when I have to do this and talk about Hayden at the same time.
Well, that's why we prepare what you want to talk about.
Doesn't mean my brain will be prepared.
Let's see. His relation to the pack. Again, he hasn't been here that long. The pack took him in, and he is very grateful to them. However, he's still fairly skittish around most of the adults, especially those in charge. So Zeke, Zoe, Clara, Ariel. He does relax around the teens and children more. Sometimes he even seems to be a secondary nanny when William needs a hand with them, or taking them somewhere, or any number of things. Of those teens he does interact with, Trisha seems to have connected with him the most, and we'll talk about her later. But Trisha is... I think Trisha reminds him of his sister, honestly.
Yeah.
Unless I'm very off base.
No,
that.
you're right.
So that's Trisha seems to come up in a lot of our live streams so far.
Yeah.
But those are really the only relationships he's built so far. Again, he hasn't been there long, and he's got a lot of trust issues to overcome before he can really connect with anyone. So we'll be building on that in the comic as well. Does human law enforcement have a non-invasive way of preventing shape-shifting? As far as I know, there is no way of preventing shape-shifting.
Yeah, there's no real way for them to prevent it.
I mean, except killing them.
Which is highly frowned upon.
Right? So no. There is no way to prevent shapeshifting. It's something they can do. It's genetic. That's like telling me that, I don't know, I can't cross my fingers. Although I suppose you could grab my fingers and make me not cross them.
That being said, I would not be surprised if there have been cases of human law enforcement or other law enforcement going to the wizards specifically to try and find a way, which would probably sorry, I had to suddenly stop because I had to read the thing. How would a law enforcement confine a crow suspect?
Probably a tranquilizer.
Honestly, as far as apprehending shifters, if they're worried about the person shifting and getting away, they probably use a mild tranquilizer. I'm just imagining a cop throwing a crow shifter into the back of a patrol car, and they open the door. They go to let the pull the person out, and a crow just flies out. And there's just handcuffs sitting on the bench. Just son of a bitch.
Which is why they use the trank.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, good question. Again, you've got a lot of them. Keep them coming. But yeah, see. We just talked about his motivations. Not motivations, his relationships with the pack. So his motivations, he really only has one real motivation, and that's survival. Both of himself and those he's closest to. So his family, his nephews and his niece and his sister. Which unfortunately there's nothing he can do for them right now, so he has to focus on his own survival. Now those motivations may change or evolve as the comic continues, but at the start where we are right now, that is his main motivation in life, is just surviving. As it is for a lot of people in general, especially if they've just come out of an abusive relationship. If you had a crow in what is called Jesse's something too small to safely go around, they're like in human form, could they
Oh,
still...
Jess's! Okay.
Yeah. Would it be easier to find the animal form? So there is nothing that can prevent a shifter from changing into their human or animal, which means if they put that around the crow or any bird shifter, they could still shift. It's possible, unless they made the Jesse of a very durable metal. It's
Jess's,
very likely that the shift would snap it.
The only way that there might be something that could stop them would have to be by magical means, and that at the moment is frowned upon in the wizard community. Wizards and shifters have had a long-standing tenuous relationship, which is something that will be talked about. I actually might go into that more also in Hayden's stream.
It's very relevant to Hayden's stuff too. So.
It is. So yeah.
Let's see, if they did metal, and they tried to shift, it would likely crush the shifter's leg. So I guess that would be a reasonable deterrent. However, I'm not sure it would be allowed to be used.
Unless, like, now that would be, there would be circumstances where I feel like it would be allowed, if only in cases of this person is a suspected murderer or something like that.
Yeah.
But simple infractions, something like a traffic violation or theft or something like that, typically wouldn't be used. But yeah.
Yeah. As a general rule, they usually use a tranquilizer on a shifter suspect. Most precincts have a couple of shifter cells, which instead of the standard bars is more of a mesh. So they can't just shift and squeeze out like the smaller shifters potentially could with just bars. The bigger shifters tend to get put with in standard cells, if only because their shifted forms can't get through the bars anyway. So once they're in custody, it's fairly easy to keep them, at least in the precincts themselves. Yeah.
And obviously, stuff like human law does still apply to shifters. Many shifter cultures do still enforce human laws and stuff, even in their own societies. Mostly because they found it's easier to do so than it is to have to worry about being hunted, and there's definitely still animosity between from shifters to humans and humanoid races, but considering they only just recently, within the past, I forgot how many years, were given the right to vote.
Give me a second, I can look it up.
Yeah, I think it was after World War II or Vietnam War.
It was fairly recently. Where's my timeline?
Be an expectation that Alpha would respond that.
Sorry, what was the question?
Would there be an expectation that an Alpha would pledge bond that it pledged that a suspect will show up for a hearing? If the individual is a part of a pack or anything like that that has a leader, typically the leader will ensure that that person will show up for their hearing. There are many who will make the person stay in jail and not post bail or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason they were caught doing something they weren't supposed to.
But most, a good many of them will make the shifters stay in jail. I think those who would bail them out, it would depend on whether or not they actually how much proof there was against them, that sort of thing. And whether or not their Alpha thinks they're a flight risk. But yes, shifters got the vote in 1965. Which, for those of you keeping track, is about 45 years after women got the vote. So it's only within the last 60-ish years that shifters, vampires, elves got the right to vote. Despite the fact that they were dying
in the States. We should clarify. Yeah. In the States is where they got the right to vote.
Yeah. Let's see. Motivations. Fears. Suppose it might prejudice the case a bit if their Alpha said for them to stay in prison until their hearing. Not necessarily. Because it's most of them tend to make them stay in prison for the most part. It's kind of just seen as the way things are. It's more newsworthy if their Alpha takes them out than stays in. Part of that, I think, is because if the Alpha does bring them out and then the shifter flees, then it's on them, and then they bring negative attention to their pack or group. Furthermore, if they bring out their person and they're found guilty, then they're seen as potentially having known and was trying to help them get away or something. It's safer for the rest of the people they're in charge of to keep the person in prison, even if they're innocent. Now, that's not to say that everyone does that, because obviously they don't. But when you have, say, 20, 30, 40 people to take care of, you have to, look after the whole. Do shifters tend to care a lot about voting, or do a lot of them dismiss it as human politics that do not touch on them much? So, back in the Revolutionary War, and I'm going to get into this, it does touch on your thing, a lot of the imitators helped them fight off the British. And in so doing, they had to reveal what they are, which got them protections in the Constitution. It did not give them the right to vote, but it did make them. It did give them protections against hunting them down and slaughtering. However, the stipulation was that they had to help the America fight their battles, which means that every single war America has ever fought, every male shifter has been drafted. So, at about World War II, they started being upset about the fact that they were being drafted to fight wars they weren't even allowed to vote on. So being able to vote actually matters a lot to them because it gives them the opportunity to decide whether or not they fight in a war. I mean, that being said, if America goes to legitimate war rather than just we're landing here and taking this place over, then the shifters still have to respond. It's something that they have to do. But yeah, so yes. Long story short, yes, voting matters to them. Yeah, good question. You have anything else to add about that?
Not that I can think of. I'm so helpful.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's see. Fears that he has. Corvus's worst fear is being absolutely useless to those around him. He's terrified of the idea of being cast out because he isn't needed. He knows he can't survive on his own, or he thinks he can anyway. And the idea of being left down in the rain, so to speak, is something that keeps him up some nights, which is with on occasion casting him out because he wasn't useful, or something like that. So he very much tries to be useful in any way that he can to the pack right now and to the murder before he left. Yeah. Why don't you talk about his character inspirations, Ty?
So, okay, we were writing up the outline for the stream last night, and I was looking at the idea of, well, he doesn't really have any inspiration. Then I started thinking about it more, and I realized he has some similarities between him and a certain dusty old crow. And by that I mean Crow Branwen from Rooster Teeth's Ruby. And I hadn't really thought about it, and it hadn't really dawned on me until yesterday. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized that yeah, he shares some similarities. He's very protective of his family and people he cares about. But he also kind of hides more of himself than he might like to admit. He has a sibling who is, it would help if I actually looked at our outline. But,
yeah, you're on point.
But yeah, he has a sibling who's very cruel to anyone, even his own family, which is kind of reminiscent of Crow Branwen's sister, Raven.
Wait,
not
Raven's
to the
his sister?
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that.
That's like the whole thing.
I didn't know that.
I'm not counting that as a spoiler because it's talked about in the early seasons. Like, it's not even mentioned in the ones that that you haven't seen. It's talked about in the seasons you've seen.
Mm.
But yes, blah blah blah. But yeah, so I guess there's some subconscious inspiration from Crow in Corvus. Other than that, really, it was just we need a character that isn't a wolf. What should we do? How about a bird? I want a crow shifter because I like crows. I like corvids in general. Crows, ravens, stuff like that. They're all really interesting to me. So yeah. Stuff we're excited about.
Yep. Hang on. A cruel leader who convinces his followers that his cruelty is necessary to keep the murder strong sounds traumatizing.
Yeah,
Yes.
honestly, that's what Corvus's brother is. He very much tries to convince everyone, or he does convince everyone that while yes, he is cruel, there is a reason for it. His cruelty will make them stronger, stuff like that. Corvus is not his only. Exactly, villains are not the villains of their own stories. Corvus is not the only one who he treats so badly.
Some of his kids.
As his,
too.
I will talk about this much. His eldest son is not well.
Nope.
Taken care of. He's basically as gaslighted as Corvus is, if not more so sometimes.
Pretty much.
You could say that he has been found wanting by his father.
Yeah.
Poor baby. But yes, yeah, he very much, villains are not the villains of their own story, they justify it to themselves. Yeah, his brother is a piece of work, and I hate that I can't say that I hate him. Because I mean, he's one of those villains that I like to dislike, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yes.
Let's see. What are you most excited about, Zach?
Well, I can't talk about what I'm most excited about.
But it does give off. What he's most excited about is kind of spoilery. The worst part is that if it is internalized, Corvus would in turn be cruel to those he loves and wants to protect because he wants them to be strong. Corvus hasn't necessarily internalized it in that regard.
He was old enough when his brother started doing this sort of stuff that his values were already in place. Because this didn't happen until his brother, this didn't really start happening until his brother came back. A lot of it didn't even remotely start until after their sister, after the other murder was wiped out. A lot of Corvus's brother's reactions to everything that happened, being forced into this this training as the next Corbo, as well as having to fight this other group because revenge for his sister's death. That all affected Corvus's brother a lot. And a lot of that wasn't directed at Corvus until after his brother became Corbo. And because of that, Corvus had already dealt with a lot of the stuff, and he didn't really internalize any of it. He does have terrible self-esteem, and he does have moments where he will look at stuff his brother said to him, or how his brother would treat him, and he would feel like he might have been right about Corvus. But when he saw what his brother was doing to his nephew, and to a few others, he recognized that as being wrong and not being what would be right for the people. I feel like
I
I'm
think,
out of words.
yeah, I think one of his goals is getting stable so that he can claim some justifiable reason why he should have custody of his nephews and niece.
Definitely.
Because he knows that's not right, and at this point, a lot of them are old enough that they need to get out and get help soon, or they may just be just as bad as their father. So yeah, that is a good point, and something that the others will definitely have to be careful of. Corbeau is Corbeau. It's French.
But yeah. Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah. No. What I'm most excited about though is just watching Corvus's character take shape in the comic itself, and watching him interact and possibly open up and become a fully functioning member of the pack. That's great. There's enough broken people in this pack.
Yeah. This really is a very, very broken pack. These poor babies.
Yeah. I mean, they all have like reasons, and not everyone is broken.
No.
But
just the ones we've talked about in some aspect.
Of the ones we've talked about, Ariel is the most well
adjusted.
Yes, well adjusted. She has dealt with her issues and has moved on, mostly. I mean, to the point where she knows that if anything happens to her pack, she's not going to survive it. But other than that, she's a fully functioning woman who has dealt with most if not all of her issues, and doesn't look at the pack and go, I could lose you someday. Oh, the torment. Not that Zeke does that necessarily like that, but she isn't carrying around that secret fear forever in the pit of her stomach. Whereas I think Zeke still does have that little ball of what if within him. And Corvus here obviously has his own issues too. Oh, cool. We will definitely have to look for them when we're done with this, so that we can read through those and see how accurate our own little assumptions
Definitely
is a thing.
If you have anything you want to talk about, I need to disappear for a bit.
Yep.
My body is unhappy, but I will be back.
Yep. So yeah. Oh, excuse me. So, Michael, do you have any other questions for us? Because they're good questions. Oh, excuse me. So yeah, I'm sorry we can't really share any of the things we're really excited about for Corvus, because a lot of that involves some spoiler aspects. But, yeah. But we told you a lot of other stuff about him, and about crows in general, and a lot of world building stuff. So that's fun. Pretty much asked all the stuff that came to mind. Alright, that's cool. Let's see, in that case... Where's my other tab? Here's my other tab. Some interesting points. I can go into some interesting points of history then, because ties. Oh, you enjoyed the prologue in chapter 1. That's good. That's good. We're glad you enjoyed it. Ty put in a lot of effort into those, and I think they came out beautifully. So that's great. Let's see. Ty is the one who can do the stopping of the live stream. So until he gets back, I can go into some interesting little shifter history, I guess. So I'm going to avoid whatever I talked about for Zeke. But let's see. Back in 1046, a group of bear shifters temporarily gained safety in Wessex because one of their members saved the life of a young girl who was the daughter of the Earl of Wessex. And their safety lasted until the Earl's death in 1053, when several hunters arrived and slaughtered the sleuth, which is what a group of bears are called. Only a handful of them escaped. So, that was fun. That's that. Let's see. There have been, over the course of known history, there have been 2 people who announced themselves to be vampires. One was in 1611, and her name was Elizabeth Bathory. She then died 2 years later of natural causes. It's unknown whether or not she was actually a vampire, as apparently they don't turn to dust when they die, if she actually was. The second was in 1758. A man named Anthony Hughes, you won't find him in any vampire books because we made him up, announced that he was a vampire as well. Until this day, he'd been seen as a kind, if eccentric old man, appearing about 34, who didn't really leave his large estate much. After he announced that he was a vampire, the church came in, they did his tests, they said he wasn't a vampire, but was possessed by a demon, and the efforts to exorcise these demons led to Anthony's death. Although it was kind of difficult to tell, because at no point could anyone find his pulse or any other signs of life. To be certain of that he was cleansed of this demon, his body was burnt so that it could be purified. So yeah. Shifter raccoon platoon with guns and grenades. I enjoy that imagery a lot, Michael. Thank you. That was beautiful. Let's see. I like that a lot. That's a very interesting image, actually. Let's see. Finally, in 1914, between 1914 and 1918, a special units officer by the name of Vladimir was found dead among his comrades after an enemy raid. Less than 5 minutes after being found, he rose from the dead and claimed he was rather hungry after all that work. And instead of eating, like, say, the standard rations, he found a stray blood bag and drank that. And thus the vampires were proven to exist. Did I hear Ty coming back?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. I had nothing else to talk about, so I went into some timeline stuff.
I heard. I had started the video up on my phone while I was downstairs, and heard you, and then it so suddenly stopped at one point. But apparently the stream didn't stop. It just, I don't know. Okay.
Oh no.
Alright. Had a train of thought of a shifter soldiers wearing armor using guns, which led to an image of a shifter raccoon platoon with guns and grenades.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I spent about a minute or so just laughing about that.
I love that.
So yeah, that's all we had planned today. So if there's nothing else you want to know or any other questions you have, I think that's it for us.
Yeah. So again, in the description is all the links for our social media and our Patreon and all that fun stuff.
Next Saturday, we will be showcasing Trisha. You've heard quite a bit about her so far, and now you'll actually get to, know about her. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Look forward to next week. We pull in the much anticipated Trisha.
And of course, next week, before that, the second set of pages will be available to the public, as will the third set of pages will be available to patrons of all tiers. So, look forward to that. I'm having a lot of fun drawing up these pages. The interactions that are coming between Zeke and Hayden are just very fun.
They are. I'm enjoying
this poor, very tired man and this very sassy cat boy. Who, if you ever called him a cat boy, would probably kill you.
Okay, but I think Zeke does at some point.
I think he does. But Zeke is intimidating, so...
Okay, Zeke's like practically twice his size.
Not quite, but close, yeah.
Well, yeah.
But yes, thank you again, Michael, for having all these awesome questions. It was great having somebody to interact with during these.
Very much so, yeah. You've got some great questions that allow us to dig into some of the deeper bits of the world we've created, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Also, if you have any further questions about when is Hayden's Spotlight, May 21st. So next month. But if you have any further questions about wolves or other shifter groups, post them to the Facebook page, and we will make sure that we write them down so that, I mean, you're welcome to keep, posting them as we go along too.
Trisha is also one of our wolf shifters, so there will be talk about that. Having talked about a lot of the shifter stuff, excuse me. A lot of the next few, at least for the next two, one of which is Trisha and the other is Apollo, who is another crow shifter. They will be mostly character oriented and talking about their characters themselves. We do have Zoe, who we may go into her brand of wolf shifter. Specifically, she's from another culture.
And more specifically about the pack she grew up in.
Yes. And that will be May 15th. And then on May 22nd, we'll talk about Hayden, and we'll get into wizards specifically.
Very much, yes. And then May 29th is Trinity, who is an elf. So we'll have a whole nother thing to delve into then. That'll be...
I will try to make sure I have as many answers as I possibly can for you, Michael, about magic. Definitely makes me realize I need to buckle down and get more stuff written out. It's all up here, not necessarily all in documents.
Especially about the magic questions, writing them up for us beforehand. You're more likely to get an answer to what you want.
Yeah, if anything, if you want to message us and send us questions, and I will put those into the spotlight specifically so I can answer them.
Yep.
All
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's everything. Thank you for tuning in, Michael, and whoever's watching this in the future. Thanks for stopping by.
All right. Have a good day.